Hello and welcome to episode 202 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week, on Saturday, my small city was issued an air quality advisory in the middle of winter. I looked at the wind direction and cried wolf, and no one believed me. Turns out I was right. It was a wolf. A big oil wolf.
Ooh, scary. After roughly 10 years of development, Apple has quietly shut down their electric car project known as Titan. CEO Tim Cook didn't want to end it, but the truth is, he lost his Apple ID password for the project, and the recovery process was too complicated.
Living within 16 kilometers or 10 miles of an oil refinery can raise your risk of cancer by as much as 10%. Our whole city is within that range of an oil refinery, and everyone just seems okay with it. I guess it's no surprise since they have put up with that acrid smell from Brian's backyard for all these years.
The Premier of oil-rich Alberta has announced new rules that restrict where clean energy can be situated, while no such rules exist for oil and gas. Added the Premier in a statement,
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up!
All that and more at this edition of the Clean Energy Show. And also this week's show, a city on Canada's east coast sizes up what EVs are like and what they're doing for their police department and how much they cost. Clean Technica commenter takes down Tesla's autonomous driving ambitions. And last week we said data centers would get their own nuclear plants, and it only took 1 week, Brian, before they actually did.
wow.
We predict the world here. The future is predicted right here on this podcast. And we revisit this week how Induction, Cooktops, and stoves will soon have their own batteries. Brian, you've got little or nothing in your personal notes here of what's happened to you this week. How you've had a boring week, or what's going on?
It's a boring week. I mean, we do have an issue with our heat pump, our cold weather heat pump, and we're trying to get that resolved. But at this point, it's just kind of a waiting game. So, nothing to report, really.
Did you go out for breakfast this morning? Did you get a donut? Is there anything that you can add to the color of the show?
Yeah, I got a mixed berry Danish from Le Macaron.
Oh, well, that's fancy. Do you do something every day?
No, not every day.
What, was it good?
Oh, it was great. Fantastic.
Did you get a coffee with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's enough details. We'll pass on that then. On the weekend, we got a big dump of snow here. We were supposed to get more than our sister city, Saskatchewan. We ended up getting less. My son's up there, and he lives on a crescent with his great uncle. And the CAA guy, which is like the American Automobile Association guy, was driving down the street in a van, and it was just this young guy, think teenager with pimples on the Simpsons character, and he got stuck, and he was stuck there the whole day. And my son spent an hour trying to get him out with other people, and it's basically like King of the Hill there. It's all these neighbors are ensconced in their old ways, and they're all old because of the age of the neighborhood, and they could not get him out, and he kept getting stuck, and they kept criticizing him. And I guess they had the snowblower, and my son actually inhaled the snowblower exhaust for an hour, and he got sick afterwards because he has asthma. And, that's not something you want to be doing, obviously. But it's got me to thinking, as batteries improve for EVs, they improve for everything. So if you have increased energy density and falling prices, well, there'll be no excuse to have a gas-powered snowblower within a few years. Like right now, I've tested them. They're good. I've watched tests of the $3,000 models. They're good, but they're not quite up to par what a snowblower does. However, I bought, because of poverty, a plug-in snowblower a couple of years ago, and we don't use it very often. We don't get that much snow here. I've got that cordless snow shovel. Works great, too, by the way.
Yeah.
The only thing is you can't aim it, so I always blow snow on my neighbor's driveway, and they don't like that. It's hard to, you can't go straight down the public sidewalk because it just shoots it to your neighbor's public sidewalk. I want it to turn slightly and shoot it out of the street. Anyway, it's all good because I used it and it went through snow like a hot knife through butter. Like it just, you really need a better extension cord because you're using, the more extension cord you have, the thicker the gauge. If you spend $100 on an extension cord, which is half the price of a snowblower, you get more oomph. But I haven't done that yet. And But it works. It works
Yeah.
great. It works better than the gas guy across the street with a modestly priced gas snowblower.
Yeah, and of course you have to worry about running over the cord with your snowblower.
Confession, I did. I did the other day, and it took off the
But
sheathing on the cord. It didn't
Not all the way through.
No, it didn't expose wires. I've done that before, but this is a plastic flexible blade on one of these things. So, yeah, and it was stupid. It was just stupid. So I was rushing too much. But I was just amazed at how quickly it went through everything, and I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, and if you go down to the hardware store where they sell snowblowers, it's kind of remarkable. About half of them are, electric or battery electric now in the choice of what you can buy. It's great.
Such an advantage because, A, you don't have to breathe the fumes, obviously, but you don't have to go out and buy gas. You don't have to make sure that your gas is fresh every year. You don't have to worry about, spark plugs and air filters and oil changes, all that stuff that is no fun, especially here where you don't use the thing very often. People are more likely to use, because it's dry here and we get just a few, inches of snow or at a time at most, usually. They take their leaf blowers out, their gas leaf blowers, which could also be electric and battery operated if you wanted to. So that's what they're doing. And then because we got regular street clean here, because we're on a major street that they come by fairly quickly. What else is going on this week? My relatives asked my wife, how do you charge an EV in a small town or on a farm? They're confused by that. And their son lives in a small town and owns a Model 3. So I don't understand why they have this confusion and why they're going to my wife and why she sort of struggled with it. The simple answer is you plug it in. I guess this implies that they think that you need a giant super connected to God charging station that runs off of lightning in order to charge your car. And that's not the case because people, I think, just assume, and maybe people listen to the show, some of them will assume that, electric car takes a lot of juice to move a big vehicle down the road. You must need a big power. But I actually charge one of my electric cars with a household outlet, which is called Level 1. And although I just use the car around the city and it's got a fairly small battery, it works pretty darn well. I'm surprised it actually charges too fast because when it gets really cold into the minus 20s like it did in Celsius last night, well, then it just keeps charging because it's running the heater and I get 100%. And I don't really want it to sit around at 100%. That's not the best thing for older cars. So that's one thing. But basically, it's like a home. I assume they have electricity on the farm and in small towns, you would plug it in. I'm assuming also that you would have longer commutes if you're driving around out there. You're not just going to the grocery store, you're doing longer things. So you probably want a level 2, which is 240 volts, which is easily done if you can spend a few dollars having one installed. Otherwise, you'd have to, depends on what your use case scenario is. But as farm equipment electrifies, and they have no idea that that's coming, you're going to want 240 or even, a good amount of electricity coming in off the line there.
Yeah, I think sometimes people, I don't know, they don't really want to know the answer when they ask a question like this. It's just a thing like they assume it's not going to work, but people are going to have to tell them a dozen times before it sinks in that, oh, you just plug it in, because that's not what they're expecting to hear.
Yeah, and if we did plug it in, I mean, people who live in apartments may not have access to any charging, and they would have to go that route and spend lots of money. And in some cases, it's not even much cheaper than gas to do that. So that's unfortunate. But as we legislate workplaces to have at least level 1, I mean, people can get 50, maybe 50 miles of range in a day or 50 kilometers anyway, depending on the weather, or maybe more, depending on how long you're there. So, Brian, the EV tax, there's an EV tax in our sister province of Alberta. It is $200 a year. Is that what our tax is? Is it the same?
I believe so, yeah.
Something like that. So, yeah, the EV association there's mixed feelings because, they're saying, the government's saying EVs are heavy. So that just builds into the myth, because an F-150 is heavier than, a Model 3. And everyone drives an F-150 or equivalent in Alberta. It's like the standard vehicle. It's an agricultural, small, cowboy town. So everyone's driving a pickup. But nobody said, whoa, 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 these things are heavy. We better tax them. They're going to wreck our roads. They're going to collapse our parkades. No one said that, but here we are. So the EV Association figured it out that for the average kilometers that a person drives in a year, that $150 would have equated what the road tax. If you're putting a gas tax, that's what this is to replace, to fix the roads, and that's what they came. So they're getting gypped by $50. But then, hey, EV drivers drive more, maybe because they can, because it doesn't pollute the frickin' planet, and because it's cheap to move around. That's just my thoughts. We'll talk about their restrictions that they put on renewables later in the show. But it's just ridiculous. Anyway, the Tesla Ford charger rolled out. Did you see that? That was since our last show, right? I mean, Ford is, well, influencers have had access to from Ford vehicles to the network. But what I thought was interesting, and it's going to take some time, I've heard from insiders that have been talking to the companies that this could take 7 months for people to get their charger. Ford's giving out free chargers for their modern EVs, not their older
the
EVs.
adapter,
The adapter, right, pardon me, the adapter, so that you can walk up to a Tesla station. And the nice thing about it, though, they had to get an over-the-air update for the Fords in order for this to work, we're told. And all you got to do is plug in. So I was hoping, praying, dreaming that would be the experience, because that's I love that Tesla experience of just plugging in. And by the way, they worked a lot faster than my Chevy plugging into a CCS charger, a non-Tesla charger. So, I don't know. We can see with my car, we'd have to go to the dealership to get it updated if it needed one. But then again, we're already working on a network, so I'm hoping that maybe we won't have to get it updated. Also hoping, of course, that they'll send us a free charger, because I don't want to spend money on it. But yeah, that would be a beautiful thing, because, if I went to a charger, a lot of the chargers that I go to on my trip, say, to Calgary, they have Tesla chargers right next door on the same lot, because there's a government incentive for Tesla. They'll get some money from it for putting up the chargers if they put up non-Tesla chargers, so they have on the same lot. So if they were full, I could just, they'd be cheaper than the Tesla, so I could just go to the Tesla. Although some people have posted videos about long lineups, at Tesla chargers that are just Teslas. There are some chargers that are fairly busy, so those ones are not gonna like us 50 kilowatt charging bolts coming up into the trough and sucking power.
And there are a few apparently busy Tesla supercharger stations that are already too busy. So those ones are not yet going to open up to non-Teslas. They're going to leave those ones for now.
So I had a Twitter poll. Should I tear into the Saskatchewan and Alberta governments, or should I ignore them? I feel like they're bullies that need to be ignored. Everybody said tear into them. It was I forget what it was. It was like 82% or something. So I have to mention that we have a carbon tax in Canada, and it's been fine since, 2015, when they originally ran on having that. And it's not a carbon tax, as our listeners will say. It's a pollution pricing, or carbon pricing. It's been called, even by the media, a carbon tax. So everybody says, well, tax bad, inflation's happening, we don't want this. In my neighbors that were asking about the car, where they charge it, they have a farm, and, they claim that the spikes on their cedar or something has been subject to a carbon tax and has gone way up in price. So there's a lot of BS going around. I don't know what the carbon tax is on a piece of metal, but it's not that much. You didn't make 6 tons of pollution to make a little spike on a tractor implement. So I'm not buying that. But of course, everyone is now, the government everybody's against it. And our province, Saskatchewan, is saying we're not going to remit our tax to the government. So I'm not going to get my cushy rebate, which I rely on as a poor person. Big fat check comes to James, as if I drive 2 SUVs and don't have solar on my roof. And I go all laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, well, the good news is that now that the provincial government has decided to break the law by not submitting the federal carbon tax, that it's the purge. We can do whatever we want now.
That's just it, Brian. If it is the purge, I'm not ready. I've got to go to Cabela's and get some crossbows. or something, because I don't want to be unarmed during the purge. But apparently the premier breaks the law, and he is literally breaking the law. So we can all break the law. If I get a speeding ticket, I'm not paying the damn thing. There's no way in hell.
Why bother?
I'm not, because it's not fair. That's what he said.
Yeah.
If it's not fair, you don't pay. So I'm not going to.
And you know what? You could probably get a lawyer to argue that point in court, and you might even be successful.
That's the thing. That's where I'm going to go murder people right now. I just try to decide who I like the least, and I can't figure out who. But I'm looking at you, Jay.
It's a long list.
I'm looking at you. Jay's high on my list. I'm coming after you, Jay. I've got a Christmas tree bag to put his body into. Like everything's all worked out. I got the hole in the yard. Yeah. So, okay. That's all. I do have some banks to rob, though, because my eaves trough fell off. And it's 6,000 feet in the air. I can't possibly go up. There's ladders that are not rated for my weight. I can't rent a bucket truck. I don't know what to do. It needs somebody to go up there. And I know what, if I get an eaves trough company, they're going to say, well, 15,000 to do all the eaves troughs.
They're going to try and convince you to replace them all. Yeah,
that's not going to happen. Okay, on Saturday, I'm minding my own business, Brian. Having a relaxing Saturday here at home as a storm approaches. And I noticed our phones start beeping, and we got an air quality advisory from Environment Canada. That is like the National Weather Service in the United States. And it was an air quality health index of 7. And normally it's around 2 or 3 in Regina, because we're a small city with 250,000 people. There's no traffic pollution per se that's really shows up on these things. There's not large industry usually, but there is an oil refinery 2 miles away from me, and it's on the northeast part of the city, and we had a northeast wind, I noticed, so I thought, hey, I bet that's it. So I got out, shot some video. There's all kinds of security around the refinery. They don't like you shooting video, but I did anyway, and I postulated on Twitter that it was the refinery, and I asked journalists to look into it, and to my disbelief, one actually did.
Wow.
And they contacted Environment Canada. I have to read you the quote. Let's see here. Yeah, Justin Scher, a meteorologist with Environment Canada, said the worsening air quality was likely the result of a specific weather pattern capturing industrial pollutants. Quote, "It is rather a localized phenomenon right now, just in Regina. I believe there is some kind of plant or something that that can cause increased levels." Well, ding, ding, ding. James is right. Yeah. Like I said, I cried wolf and I was correct.
And I saw that too, that there was an air quality advisory, but I'm lazy, so I didn't look into it any further, but I suspected it was something like that.
Really? Well, people seem okay with that, you know? No one seems to complain. We live right next door to a refinery. I know somebody on Twitter said they got them in Sarnia, and it's a big problem in Sarnia because there's a lot of petrochemicals being developed there, and the cancer rates are off the charts there. It's worse than here. But generally speaking, if you live near a refinery, and when I say near, I mean within 10 miles or 16 kilometers, your risk of cancer for certain cancers goes up noticeably. And we're all just okay with it. You know, it's okay. They just expanded the refinery. Some a-hole on Twitter said, well, you moved into that neighborhood and they built the refinery in 1962 or something, or 1948. Well, no, they didn't. They had a tiny little refinery here in 48, and I didn't move in here. And the whole city didn't choose to move here. And you know, the refinery is evil. They have lawyers, and media can't cover anything or get to any information for security reasons. And it's all BS. You know, I don't want them to give up any security information, but I also don't want us all to fucking die of cancer prematurely. I mean, it's bullshit. It's crap. So in 2020, a team of physicians, environmental scientists, and students at the University of Texas Medical Branch completed a multi-year study of cancer rates among individuals living close proximity to oil refineries and found statistically significant increases in several cancers among those living nearest to these facilities. We observed the proximity to an oil refinery was associated with this increased risk. For example, persons residing within 10 miles, 0 to 10 miles, were statistically significantly more likely diagnosed with lymphoma, than individuals who lived within 21 to 30 miles of an oil refinery. Increased risk for 10 miles or 16 kilometers is, like I said, the entire city and our bedroom communities, Brian. I had my geography genius son figure it out. It was 260,000 people in that circle around that area. And we're all just okay with this. Just keep burning things, good jobs. I'm happy to die. Well, I'm not. Bladder cancer. My friend has bladder cancer. My friend Jack has bladder cancer. And he lives, not too close to the refinery, but he's in the north end. And lung cancers are up to, 3 to 10% higher risk. According to The Guardian, a dozen U.S. oil refineries in 2021 exceeded the federal limit on average benzene emissions. So benzene is a known carcinogen that is highly toxic and volatile when exposed to air. Much of the excess transmissions come through leaks in valves and tanks. Brian, there's a better way. That's my point. There's a better way. This is archaic, and we are the last generation. This is going to be like smoking. In not too many years, this is going to be unacceptable. It shouldn't be acceptable now, but yeah, it's the air quality of, specifically said NO2, nitrogen dioxide. So those are bad things, bad things to have in the air is volatile organic compounds, not what you want. Anyway, I did my research. I stood up for society. No one seems to care. Good luck.
Thank you, James, for standing up for society. Okay, on to somewhat lighter news. Apple, for years, around 10 years, has been working on an electric car. And they haven't really talked publicly about it too much, but they've finally called it quits, which, people have been speculating for a while now. Is this actually going to happen? So, after, 10 years or more than 10 years of working on this, Apple has decided not to do it. There were 2,000 people working on the car project, which is a lot. And they're going to shift some of those people to AI, since AI is now the next big thing, and Apple needs to do more with that. There was some reports, like the most recent report said that they were targeting a 2028 release date, and the car was going to cost $100,000.
Wow, that's one expensive iPad with wheels.
Yeah, so that could be
Does it come with Apple Music?
Why.
Holy crap. That's $100,000 US too, right? I mean, we're not talking Canadian dollars here.
And Apple products, they often do cost more than, sort of comparable products, but not that much more. That's
they've been working on
self-driving,
like autonomous driving tech as well.
Yeah, and that was, always part of the plan, that these were potentially going to be vehicles without steering wheels, that they would be completely autonomous, and they had all kinds of people working on autonomy. And so shareholders were just kind of pressuring them to kind of make a decision, are you going to do this? Are you not going to do this? And they decided not to.
It's been largely rumors on and off, and we thought it was gone for a while, and then no, it was still going. I noticed Andrew Coyne, a Canadian newspaper columnist, national newspaper columnist, retweeted that the Apple car was dead because he'd been tweeting out evidence that EVs are not happening.
Yeah,
I'm sure he doesn't drive one. He doesn't know anything about it, and probably hasn't reached out to, say, Bloomberg or somebody else, which he could perfectly well do, and get information about what's actually going on.
Yeah, 1 in 5 cars sold are electric. That's what's actually going on.
Thank you. There you go, Andrew. Brian just lit it up, baby. He just told you what's really going on.
1 in 5.
Yeah, and that's only increasing. And by the way, the secret that Brian and I have, that not everybody has, is that they're better than combustion cars. Cheaper to operate and just downright better in so many ways. It's not a one-to-one comparison. And, eventually everybody will be able to afford one. Eventually, and they're still improving. That's, I just retweeted as you were getting ready that a Chinese car was showing their car charging in real time on the dash. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, super fast charging.
Yeah, well, it was beyond anything we know. It was beyond 500 kilowatts, and It was filling basically as fast as a gas tank would. You know,
Wow.
those batteries aren't on the shelf right now, but they're coming. That's the thing. People say, well, EVs can only do this and this. We can't have them only EVs in 2035, but, you know, I'm going to do a video on this when I get the time. There's a lot of things that are changing for EVs. What we have today is not what we're going to have tomorrow. And what we burn off the grid today is not going to be the same grid it is tomorrow. So it's a totally different thing. In Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, this is from a Facebook update. This is very unusual for us, but I thought I would highlight this because a Nova Scotia Police Department, I believe he was the chief, had an EV update for the community. I think it's like 8,000 people. It's a small city. And he says, in short, our EVs, they have two EVs, okay? I think they got a Mach-E and a F-150. The F-150 does more work, but they're used around the clock, okay? And he says they're fine. He says over and over, like 4 times, they're not for everyone. And he said, you know, don't give me myths until you read this story. Several times, like he's really, you know, a small city, you're bound to get lots of misinformation on Facebook, of course, because that's where people full of wonderful information dwell. And he had to disclaim it, like, you know, almost as much as he wrote about how good they were. There was half of it was disclaimers over and over again. But the town will, in fact, likely save more than expected when they initially bought these vehicles, making these cheaper to own and operate than their gas counterparts. And guess what? That saves the town money, or the city money. Both EVs are working flawlessly, he says. Their operational uptime is the same or better than their gas equivalents. Charging is a non-issue as they are regularly topped up whenever they are at the station. This actually reduces officer downtime as they don't need to stop and fill up at the gas station. This would be true, Brian, for all kinds of purposes for fleets. If you have a business, it's a cable company or a plumber, the downtime, you're not spending time filling up your tank because you're doing it whenever you're at the office. So both the Tesla and the Lightning, it's a Tesla Model 3 and a Lightning, pardon me, they cost more than their combustion counterparts when they bought them. They've gone down since then, but the expectation is for the Tesla that it would save $5,000 per year, meaning that it would, before the end of 3 years, taxpayers would say a net savings of around $15,000. But I know that they're still complaining about it on Facebook. Doesn't matter that that your taxes are getting saved and it can go to something better. For additional details, it has cost only $625 in electricity to operate the Tesla from March 23 to February 2024. To give you some perspective, this particular vehicle costs the same for 3 months of use charging as 2 shifts, 24 hours, of operation of the gas Durangos. For this vehicle, 1 month of use costs the same as 2 shifts. So that is very impressive, and that's real world, okay? This is not on paper what we think we're going to get. This is what's actually happening. He says in terms of dollars, we are looking at over $10,000 a year in savings for this vehicle, which means we'll net the taxpayer almost $30,000 in savings over the lifetime of this vehicle, which is definitely not an insignificant amount. Imagine if they were all electric. For the Lightning, it's costing us an average $50 per week to charge. But this vehicle, he says, remember, is being driven constantly.
Yeah, police cars are a really good choice to go electric for many reasons, but, you know, they're often just idling, you know, waiting somewhere to give people tickets or something. And, you know, it's the perfect use case, but then also a lot of miles. And the more miles you drive, the more you save with electric.
And they'll be doing lots of idling as the purge takes place, as lawlessness takes over our province here in Canada, because the premier has decided the laws don't mean anything.
Okay, speaking of laws, we have some new laws in Alberta, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about these jackasses. I know it's
true, though. I mean, they don't deserve our attention.
No.
We're better than them, Brian.
We have many political leaders that are basically trolls, and I don't like to feed the trolls, but in Alberta, they've got new rules. Around 6 months ago, they posted a moratorium on new clean energy projects because they were all worried about them. And so they've come up with new rules that will block renewable energy projects on prime agricultural land and limit the placement of wind turbines to preserve pristine viewscapes.
35 kilometers of a pristine view, 20 miles or so.
Yeah. Now, Alberta does have a lot of really nice, beautiful vistas and landscapes. And sure, you wouldn't want to...
Do you know what they're obstructed by? Pump jacks for the oil industry.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. When you drive into Banff, one of the most beautiful places in the world, there's a factory for cement and lime mining.
I remember once, many years ago, I took a ferry from Vancouver out to Vancouver Island, and I was very surprised to see clear cutting of the forests on the side of the mountains that you could see from the ferry. And that just seems so dumb to me. Like if you're, people are always worried about too much logging. Like, why would you put it in plain view of everybody riding the ferry? But nobody wrote up a law to stop that from happening.
It's insane. Of course it's insane. It's stupid. Now, the thing is here, Alberta has the largest clean energy industry in Canada. Things are taking off because of the way their electric system is made up. It's good for private enterprise. Now they're saying private agricultural land can't be used for this. Well, is it not going to be used for oil either? Because there's lots of oil in agricultural land. Oil uses 125 times the footprint of this stuff. This has been studied by Pembina Institute in Alberta. It's BS. And, I would rather look at 100 miles of solar than one lousy goddarn pump jack, because they're ugly and I know what they represent. They represent death.
Yeah.
They're the Grim Reaper.
And it is remarkably similar to what's going on in Texas and Alberta, very much the Texas of Canada, ranching and oil and whatnot. Texas has all kinds of clean energy going on. And, it's a little bit different, but the politicians are often talking down clean energy, but there's enough of a free market that it's going on anyway.
Yeah, it's stupid. If you're a farmer, if the world was free and the government was out of your business, it would let you do whatever the hell you want with that land. But no, not if it's clean, not if it insults the oil industry. And, it's not going to make a damn bit of difference to the transition away from oil. It's one province. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to slow anything down at all. What it's going to do is it's going to kill jobs, it's going to kill investment, and it's going to keep people away from investing. They're not going to move their companies. Like I've said before, companies are very cognizant of their carbon footprint. Are they going to go to the land of the oil sands where renewables are not welcome and they're not built up enough to supply energy for, say, Amazon or whatever? It's not going to happen. So you're shooting yourself in the foot over and over again. And, let them. It's going to be a wasteland in a few years. Who gives a crap? That's their own doing. And if people don't speak up against it and educate themselves, it's on them.
And I think it will slow things slightly. But of course, as we've said many times, when clean energy is better and cheaper, which it is already, this isn't going to be an issue. But yeah, this 35-kilometer buffer zone could really amount to a very large bit of land. It could be 3/4 of southern Alberta would be basically banned from this because of the Rocky Mountains going through. And
you can't ruin the view of a pump jack either, or an oil storage tank. We need to see those and appreciate them and feel proud about them.
But also the rules are in many ways just vague, right? So, the exact wording leaves some interpretation open. So
you're not going to invest. That's the thing. And they don't want them to invest.
If there's uncertainty.
My point is that clean energy is covering the world. If it doesn't cover all of Alberta, well, it's not going to slow it down worldwide. And, the hell with them. I'm not mad. I'm just worked up a bit.
You're just disappointed.
Yeah, the defibrillator is not even pre-warmed. It's just sitting there cool. So if you're done with that one, Clean Technica published a long comment from one of their readers, which was unusual, on the state of autonomous driving and where Tesla stands compared to Waymo. I thought I would give you the view and why perhaps Brian will be shirtless in a few years if he doesn't sell his Tesla stock. This is one point of view. I know you don't believe that. The guy's name is Charlie Doyle, and he feels that Waymo, that's the under the Google umbrella, The ones that are not shut down in California and Arizona and have robotaxis operation for no drivers. And I keep repeating this because people are constantly surprised. You mean there's robotaxis that actually exist that don't require a driver? And yeah, look it up on YouTube. It's weird. And people, I never do that. Well, you will. You will. And it'll be safer. So Waymo is at 9 million real robotaxi miles and counting. And it seems like, Teslas can't do much right now. They can't do 9 million miles without, killing a herd of buffalo or something. They're going to do some bad things if you let it go. So neural nets, he points out, and large language models are used by every AI company. Now, the thing is, we thought that Tesla, it's using AI. It's just going to have this really smart AI that's going to use a camera. And his point is, well, they're doing that too. They have the top AI in the world, some of the people, and they've invented some of the things that are even used. And he said that geofencing with maps, that's been kind of like, well, you have to geofence yours. When Tesla becomes all-knowing, it's going to be able to go anywhere. That's the dream. And he says, well, they're not going to get licensed if they're not geofenced, if they're not certified one jurisdiction at a time. And that's going to take some time too, just like it will for everyone else. Yeah, so he says that geofencing can scale. There are ways of doing it, and Mobileye is, it only takes them a few months to do this type of mapping. So Waymo can themselves map a large test area in a few months, or they can use their partners. And if they wanted to, they could partner with the mapping companies to map the whole country very quickly. The bottleneck for scaling a robotaxi business is getting licenses from the regulators. Like I said, Tesla will have to get licenses the same way, and that's going to be the, if the tech was ready to go. And by the way, Waymo is expanding. They're just waiting for regulation to let them. And then they can expand and prove one jurisdiction at a time. I'm sure it'll be in the south where it's not too snowy, and work their way up. And yeah, the hardware on these things, Brian, is huge, where they disappear into the Tesla. They're tiny on the Tesla and just part of the car. He doesn't see that. I don't see that as a problem. I mean, other than the fact that it might cost more, I don't care that my robotaxi has a big, unit on top if it's going to keep everybody safe. I don't care. But yeah, this stuff is getting cheaper. LiDAR on a chip, including a 360-degree LiDAR, is coming very soon from MIT and others. And I just wanted to point out that contrarian view of, because we're wondering, right? I mean, Tesla has been promised and promised and promised, and it just doesn't seem to be progressing very fast. In fact, it's kind of concerning to me.
Yeah, Tesla's got a different approach. I mean, it's impossible to say who's going to be first. I mean, I think the Tesla, if they can solve it, it will be scalable, possibly better than these other solutions. They've got the most data because they've got the most cars on the road collecting data. So if it turns out that driving data is one of the key components, then Tesla's got an advantage there. But we just got to wait and see.
Well, we're hearing that there's all-knowing AI on the horizon, and that some people think it's here. I wonder, though, how advanced. I know Stephen Colbert had a guest on, an author, last night talking about that, and how for the first time in history, this really applies to our show, Brian. In 20 years, we don't know what skills we're going to need or what the world is going to be like. For the first time in history, we don't know that. And I feel that, and you probably feel that because you've got kids. Although, one of your sons is an electrician. We know we're going to need that. That's pretty good. But, the other things, I don't know, I've got an artsy daughter. Our computer's going to do all the art in the future. I don't know. Are they going to do my son's engineering job? Are we going to even need roads and bridges? These are questions I have, and it's weird.
Yeah, well, you and I did fine arts degrees, and a fine arts degree is often stated as something where
That's why I can't fix my yeast trough. Don't you get it?
But the idea behind a really good fine arts education is that you learn to learn, you learn to think. Like, you don't necessarily have the kind of skill where you can walk into a building, but you should have the problem solving skills to solve lots of things. But if AI could just do that, then that's pointless too.
Well, I wonder if advances in AI won't solve, just move over into the automated driving sector, if there is major advances. And there seems to be something or something soon that could happen. Whether it's killing humanity yet, probably not, hopefully, but maybe it'll solve driving. I don't know. But that's what we need. The AI is doing a lot of things, and it's going to need a lot of electricity. And that brings us a smooth transition to what we said last week, that this type of thing was coming, that huge data centers like those for AI will need their own nuclear plants because they need so much power that this could be the nuclear renaissance, because these companies could just buy their own reactors for billions of dollars and essentially pay a green tariff to get their 24/7 clean electricity, which they all want to do by 2030. And here we are. A week later, there's an announcement that one of the U.S. largest nuclear power plants will directly power cloud service provider Amazon Web Services' new data center, and only that nuclear reactor. The power provider Talon Energy sold its data center campus, Commonwealth Data Assets, to Amazon Web Services for $650 million. Amazon will develop up to a 960 megawatt data center. That's a nuclear reactor at the Salem Township in Pennsylvania. 1,200-acre campus is directly powered by a nuclear reactor in the future. So, and there's not much left over for other people, is my point. You know, they're just going to sell it to Amazon. So,
yeah, every aspect of society is going to need more electricity, and yeah, all of this computer data centers and AI. It's we're going to need a lot of juice for that. And speaking of juice, from Electrek, induction ovens with batteries. This is something I did not expect to see coming. But I'm a big fan of induction cooktops. We have one in our kitchen. We got rid of a gas hookup to put that in. And induction cooktops are just essentially really efficient electric, cooktops and stoves. But there's a couple models coming out that are going to have batteries in them. And James, why do you suppose that you would put a battery in an induction cooktop?
We talked about this once on the show before, and I'll tell you why. It's because... Because I listen to the show. You don't listen to the show, Brian.
No,
it's
I don't.
Good show.
I don't care for it.
It's a very good show. I'm really hooked. You know, a couple seconds in, I'm hooked. For one thing, the voices of that guy, James, very sexy. Can't get enough. The point is that when you use an induction cooktop, it has a big power surge. So, and you see, if you listen to the show, you can become smarter, Brian. You really can. Big power surge when you turn on the induction cooktop. And that way, you don't need a bigger electrical connection. You can rely just on a small electrical connection if it uses that surge from the battery, which is already stored up in advance. Am I correct?
Yeah, level 1, basically, like a normal standard household outlet in North America, which is 110, 120 volts. But yeah, you might typically need a 240 volt connection to put in an induction cooktop. And if you're replacing a gas one, then yeah, you definitely don't have a 240 volt outlet there. If you already had an electric stove, then you probably already have a 240 volts.
That's something I didn't think of, because it can be, it's like getting an EV charger. You might have to upgrade the panel if you don't have enough room. So that could be an issue for people in places that have gas, and we want them to get off gas, don't we?
Yeah. No, it's definitely an issue, and I had to upgrade the electrical service in our house from 100 amp to 200 amp because I wanted to do things like that. We have 2 electric car chargers. We have the induction cooktop.
You have 2 car chargers now? 2?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
How
yeah,
does
you
that
knew
work?
that. If you listen to the show, you would know that.
I don't listen to you. No, really, you got both going on the driveway.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and there's no problem. I mean, I spoke to someone the other day, and they said, well, you can't possibly charge both cars at once, can you? And, there are some situations where you can't if you don't have enough service.
I mean, but I am. I'm using level 1. I'm getting by on level 1. I think you could, too, if you needed to. I don't know how much driving you guys do.
Yeah, well, we actually have the Model 3 plugged into level 1 because we've got 3 cars in the driveway.
So you got 3 charging then?
I've got 3 charging, and it's really not charging.
It's going to collapse any second. Run for your lives.
It's just plugged in because it's been frigid cold. And if you've got an electric car and it's below, minus 10, minus 20 Celsius, you're going to want to plug it in just so that the battery doesn't get too cold. So yeah, we've got 3 EVs plugged in pretty much all the time, and it's not really a problem. So one of the nice things with these battery cooktops is this all counts towards the Inflation Reduction Act rebates and bonuses that you can get in the United States of America. So you can get one on the Induction cooktop, and then if it's got a battery, you can sometimes get a rebate on the battery as well. So there's a couple of different ones that are coming out. These are not quite out yet. There's one called the Impulse Labs cooktop. This one is $5,500, so it's not cheap, but it comes with a 3 kilowatt hour battery in it, which is, what is that? About the third the size of like a Tesla Powerwall, like a home battery would be maybe 3 times that size. But yeah, you sort of charge up those batteries when electricity is cheap, and then it can dispense up to 10 kilowatts of power, even though it's only plugged in to a normal, 120 volt outlet. It stores all that energy in the battery.
My guess is you'll never know it's there, right? It'll just be integrated into the machine. It'll just be part of life in the future.
It'll be seamless. No, it's a 1.5 kilowatt system that can output 10 kilowatts of power, which is pretty great. Now, there is one that can also do a 240 volt, and there are possibly ways that these could also be used as home backup, or at least backup for your stove, so you can still cook during a power outage, or you could maybe back up your refrigerator as well. That's maybe not enough to run the whole house for very long with a battery that size.
Yeah, well, that's interesting though, because most power outages in North America are, well, in urban areas, brief, right? Usually,
yeah.
Unless you're talking about a hurricane, then that's a different situation, and there's lots of people who are in our listening distance who have suffered from hurricanes. That's for sure. But you would be able to, I'm thinking of myself. You think, oh, darn, we can't eat anything now. We have to have something that's cold, and if we open the fridge, that's no good. But at least you could cook. If it's down for a couple of hours or something, you would be able to cook, and that's pretty cool.
No, that's great. So there's another one coming out. Channing Street Copper is another company. Theirs is called the Charlie Oven. This is around $6,000. But again, you can get rebates for these, through the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. This one has a 4 kilowatt hour battery, and it also has an oven. It's a cooktop and an oven. It's a full stove kind of thing. And, you could, 4 kilowatt hours is getting up there. But, each component of this, the battery and the cooktop, can possibly qualify for, a rebate through the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S.
We've charged our cell phones on my bike battery, my e-bike battery, which is, is it half a kilowatt or something like that? Let's just say it's half a kilowatt. And it's got a USB port. So yeah, that was just one of those things that you can do. And sure, you could charge your cell phones off the stove too, I'm sure, or run a light or whatever you want to run. Maybe you've got a whole grid connected to your outlet on your stove with a bunch of extension cords trying to power you through the night or something. But
we're going to have to electrify so many things. And one of the roadblocks is going to be, there's not going to be 240 volts everywhere. So we've talked about like heat pump water heaters that do the same thing. They can run off a normal 110 volt thing. So this is definitely going to be a piece of the puzzle in the next decade or so as we transition to everything electric.
So the city of Boston is going big on charging.
Yeah, so this story from Electrek, city of Boston is going to put in 250 curbside EV chargers. So they've got a plan in Boston. They want every household to be within 10-minute walk of a public EV charging station.
Well, that's interesting.
And yeah, so to accomplish this goal, they figured, well, we're going to have to do curbside. So this is the thing we've talked about. I saw some of them when I was over in the UK. You can often work off of the existing, streetlight infrastructure or something like that. So the city itself is not actually paying any money for any of these. They've just opened this up to a couple of different companies that are basically getting the contract. This is going to be a for-profit business. They're working sometimes with, there'll be a business or something that they will run the line from a business, and then the business shares in the profits. But, it's not going to cost the city of Boston anything. They're hoping that this is a viable business model for these companies to provide, this curbside charging, which will not likely be the, level 3 super fast chargers, but, the slower level 2 ones, which are perfect for, if you need to park on the street for a while.
Well, that's different, isn't it? I mean, that's a different approach. I hope it works. I hope they're not too expensive. If you're profit sharing with the local business, they could be, raising that. You don't want it to be expensive, but, it's not going to be the price if you do have access at home. In bigger cities, people have to park on the streets, but there is already electrical infrastructure there. There's street lamps, and they're using less electricity than they used to because they're using LEDs. So you got extra juice on each system, I'm guessing. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
The growth of clean energy technologies, including solar, wind, and nuclear power in recent years is having a major impact on CO2 emissions. Without them, the IEA says the rise in emissions since 2019 would have been 3 times higher. So that's good. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We're just getting started.
Yeah, every once in a while you do hear a depressing report that, maybe emissions are not exactly falling worldwide. They're still kind of climbing up. But this report suggests that the climb would be much worse if we didn't have those clean technologies.
Ford's EV price cuts of recent have boosted demand of their all-electric cars because their sales have climbed 80% in February. Google-backed EV charging startup Gravity opens up fast public charging networks in the United States at 500 kilowatts. If you're wondering what that is, you don't have an EV, you're new to all this. If you charge at home, it's about 1 kilowatt. If you have a level 2 charger, it's about 6, 7, 8 kilowatts, up to 19 potentially, but not usually. And fast chargers, and my car charges at 50, so 1/10 of this. And most cars on the road are at 350 maximum, the Hyundais and Porsches and such. So what do you think of that, Brian? Is this the limit? Is this where we're going to stay? Is this going to be the gas station equivalent when cars catch up to this charger?
Yeah, I imagine it'll eventually go even higher. But yeah, of course, the problem is that not a lot of cars can accept this 500 kilowatts, but you might as well build that infrastructure. And eventually cars will figure it out. There's always a concern if you charge your batteries too fast that it could degrade them. So, we're making incremental progress on all of this stuff every year. Cars are charging faster every year, often just through software updates. So, 500 kilowatts, bring it on.
Hyundai is updating the popular Ioniq 5 EV with a few more miles of range. It's the first time this has got an update. I still want one. It's got a rear wiper, which is highly sought after, those rear wipers.
Yeah. Big complaint of the first one, no rear wiper, and it's a hatchback, so the window was often getting clogged up.
And also over-the-air updates, which means you'll get a better car as you go along. I like that. It's time for a CS Fast Fact. Solar in 1957, Brian. You could get solar in 1957. Not very easily, but you could. It was $360,000 per megawatt hour. That's a lot.
Adjusted for inflation.
Adjusted for inflation. I should have said that. I was about to say that in today's dollars. Solar in 2024 is now $60. So from $360,000 to $60, and it's still falling. And people say, well, it can't go any further, but it is.
Big difference. Yeah, still getting cheaper.
Tesla has shut down its Gigafactory in Berlin after suspected sabotage results in a power outage. If only they had cooktops with battery backup in the break room, they would have done better.
Yeah, there's been a lot of protests over the years for the Berlin plant for Tesla, green activists, but they could probably spend their time better elsewhere.
The agriculture sector has spent millions of dollars on discrediting plant-based diets, a new report has claimed. The report, published by the consumer advocacy organization Freedom Food Alliance, last week found that multinational meat companies and lobby groups were using industry-funded research public ad campaigns and educational materials to sway public opinion on meat and dairy. We're going to see more of this. It's not just going to be big oil that's messing with us. It's going to be agriculture too, because there's going to be a shift away because of emissions and because of preference and because there will be alternatives. And, you know, my hairstylist last week said, can you believe they're growing meat in a lab? I'm never going to eat that. And then I told them about the dairy disruption, and it's identical. The proteins are identical. And then I also told them you drink beer. It's made the same way. You eat cheeses. They're made the same. Doesn't matter. You know,
Doesn't matter.
People just, I don't know, get an education, people. Become a critical thinker. For some reason, the education's important, you know? Like Elon Musk doesn't have an education. Smart guy, can't critically think.
We got a fine arts education, so we learned how to think.
And how to get by on $5 a month. Which I'm very good at. You once told me to write a book on how I was so thrifty with my money.
Yeah.
Because I live beyond my means. A whopping 104 clean tech manufacturing facilities is investing $123 billion with a B dollars. They're all underway since the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. This is something that we talked to the Bloomberg people about, and I said, is it really going to happen? They said they were kind of skeptical. Because you can't just say, snap your fingers and bring back manufacturing to the United States. But it's happening somehow. And then, of course, Biden's not getting a damn bit of credit for it. Manufacturing projects include 34 solar factories, 34 battery factories, 14 wind factories, 14 EV factories so far, and 7 electrolyzers for hydrogen conversion. So, you know, if anyone else did that, they'd give him a cape, you know, like it's just their communications are not working, or people just don't care. Climate change did not drive the Chile fires, scientists have concluded. It's just in case you thought the coverage of every weather event was, you know, hype about climate change. Well, scientists sometimes say things are not, and I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, so there, I guess, were fires in Chile, but this time they cannot point the finger at climate change.
Good news for Canadian EV sales when all the public attention has been around declining EV momentum. In 2023, battery electric and plug-in hybrid electric vehicle registrations actually increased at a higher rate than they did in 2022. 48.9% year-over-year growth in 2023, which is pretty healthy. That's only compared to 38.8% year-over-year growth in 2022, Brian. So that is really good news, hot off the press. The IEA says advanced economy GDP grew 1.7%, but emissions fell 4.5%. Another good news story about emissions. So that's looking better. Goldman Sachs forecasts that battery prices will fall 40%. This is Goldman Sachs. This isn't Clean Technica. This isn't you. It's not me. It's Goldman Sachs. Very conservative, very, serious. It says that the battery prices will fall 40% from 2023 to 2025. So that's incredible. Like that short period of time. I imagine what they'll do if they have further momentum down the road. And finally this week, the U.S. Department of Energy and National Nuclear Security Administration want commercial solar developers to build nuclear farms on land where nuclear bombs were tested. I mean, solar farms. They want to build solar farms where nuclear bombs... Well, it's kind of solar. As we said before, solar is wind is solar because the wind doesn't blow without the sun, heating things up in some areas and stuff. The sun is nuclear fusion, right? So, I mean,
yeah, and you know that because of your fine arts education.
Exactly. So yeah, there's been places where the bombs have been tested for the 50s to the 90s, and I'm assuming they're a bit radioactive, so the Department of Energy, which runs this stuff, has an offer. And you might be wondering, Brian, has anyone taken them up on this offer to build solar farms there? Well, sit down, because 6 companies have turned in proposals. I'm guessing they're getting a good deal on this bombed land. And only a minimal human labor is needed for wind and solar, so you're not sitting around there for a long time. In other words, you can't build a nuclear plant on a nuclear bomb plant test area because you'd have to be there for a long time.
It would take too long.
Yeah, you can get in and out fairly quickly. So I thought that was an interesting story to end the show on this week.
And that is our show for this week. Please take time to contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And around social media, we are Clean Energy Pod.
Thanks to everyone who listens to the show. We really want to hear from you, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. You know, write us. Sit down and write us right now. Your feedback really drives the show. And you can find video of our show on TikTok and YouTube, including my scathing weekend editorial on the oil, cancer-causing oil factory in our neighborhood of Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Have a look at the Clean Energy Show store. We got merchandise if you're interested, and you can donate to the show, which helps us a great deal. If you're new, remember, subscribe with your podcast app. Every week we are here, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.